Hello again. I'm Ernst Friedrich, welcoming you to another episode of Sachsen-Altenburg World History. Today, let me take you to the fertile plains of the Altenburg Land, to an obscure place on the outskirts of town, a place of action for the last 1,000 years. Some 200 years ago.
The happy days, when the Dukes of Saxon-Gotha-Altenburg ruled, and when a Duchess Carolyne was famous here.
Duchess Carolyne? Little is known about her today, so let's put some color into her life. I told you about her family in another episode. Look at that.
Somebody built a romantic house and named it after her.
And the house still stands today by the same name. After all of the wars with Napoleon, revolutions, World War I, World War II, fascism, communism, and the often blind destruction of modern progress.
There it is, retaining the original style in architecture, just bigger, bolder, and, regrettably, more secluded from the public than ever before. 200 years of world history in nothing but a hidden house behind a high hedge.
That, too, is part of Sachsen-Altenburg's world history.
What's it all about? This building, called Caroline's Joy, or, in German, Karolinenfreude. Princess Caroline was born into the family of the Landgraves of Hesse. Her daddy was Billy from Hesse, and her mommy was Willie Caroline of Denmark, Norway, and all those cold countries up north.
Our Caroline.
Caroline was then married to a good-looking young man, August, the prince heir of the double duchy of Saxony-Gotha and Saxony-Altenburg. August had before been married to a princess from Mecklenburg. The marriage produced a child named Louisa, a cute little baby. But the mother died, leaving Prince August looking for a new bride and mother for his daughter.
Moreover, he needed a male heir, of course. Caroline was a splendid catch.
She came with a huge dowry and immediately took to the little motherless Louisa as if she was her own. August may have been quite pleased, at least until his mother-in-law moved in with them as well.
There we have it. First wife gone, second wife took over, stepchild taken care of, mother-in-law moved in. One big, happy family.
The people of the duchy loved Caroline for her gentle ways, love of art, and nature.
Sadly, Duchess Caroline didn't have any children of her own.
But her love for children was showered not only upon her stepdaughter Louisa. She also supported a school for girls, which was then named Karolineum, and which still exists today.
More about that another time, if you want.
Now, in Altenburg resided the high-ranking state minister Hans von Thümmel. He had made a fortune by creating better surveys and maps, selling them far and wide. Hans von Timmel loved to construct luscious gardens and romantic houses. So, on the outskirts of Altenburg, he built two of them, one in the Polish peasants' style, and another one in a romantic, playful style. Both buildings still stand today. The more playful one he named in honor of Duchess Carolyne. Okay, she was used to living in palaces with grandiose salons, as shown here in her own palace. But she fell in love with the simple country house.
I believe one can still feel today the reason why it was called a joy, Caroline's joy. Next to it, von Timmel constructed the so-called Polish hut, a country house. Its defined lines and structure provide a strong and manly counterpart to the feminine and playful Caroline's joy.
The Duchess lived to the blessed age of 77.
Regrettably, she became quite lonesome, as her husband August preferred to run around in women's clothing. He liked young men a lot more than women, and often embarrassed others by his unpredictable behavior. He also wrote a book that described his inclinations. The German poet Goethe described him both as pleasant and repulsive. Maybe that is all that needs to be said on the subject.
Duchess Caroline was the great lady behind Princess Louisa.
A stepmother, but the one who made Louisa, if you will. Who cares, you might ask? Just another pretty princess.
Well, let's speed through time together. The baby Louisa grew up, and was, thankfully, not put into a nunnery or elsewhere. The little duckling grew into a beautiful swan and young woman. Louisa married Prince Ernst, the later Duke of Sachsen-Altenburg, a strong man, maybe as compensation for her having grown up without a real male figurehead in her life until then. It was a dream wedding, of course, and her wedding gown is on exhibit even today. Louisa and Ernst soon had two sons, the heir and the spare, named Ernst and Albert.
What a dream machine, this family!
Had it not been for Ernst, the father's fascination with other women.
Maybe it was Louisa's fate. Her father loved too many men, and her husband too many women.
Ernst Jr. grew up and succeeded his father, leaving his good-looking younger brother Albert without much of a commission. So, Albert went to university, studied a lot, and resigned himself to a life in the shadow of his older brother.
But then Albert got lucky.
He got to marry his cousin Victoria, the Queen Victoria, of England, Scotland, Ireland, Canada, Australia, and pretty much most of the world. The British were already in Afghanistan then, and India, and soon China. Anyhow, Louisa's son Albert became the queen consort. The grande dame in the background was Duchess Carolyne. She lived to see the wedding of her beloved step-grandchild. As we know, Victoria and Albert had 2 carriages full of children, and thus the line continued to the present Queen Elizabeth II, and from her to the present Duke and Duchess of Cambridge, popularly known as William and Kate.
Too much of a jump? Are you stressed out? Don't worry, we're almost done.
The river Plessa in the Altenburger land and the former Duchy of Sachsen-Altenburg have a connection to the River Thames. The romantic hut of Karolinenfreude is historically and romantically connected to Buckingham Palace, from Caroline to Kate's baby, George Alexander Louis, and the future of the British monarchy.
The legacy of people and the legacy of places. That is what I wanted to show you here in another episode of Sachsen-Altenburg World History.